So for today's video, we're going to be talking about teen pregnancy. We both got pregnant at a very young age. I got pregnant at 17.
And I got pregnant at 19.
So we'll be talking about our experience, what that was like, and how it's impacted us as mothers, and where we are today.
So stay tuned to hear our stories.
So I actually got pregnant at 17 years old. I was still in high school. I was a senior in high school. It was like August, I think, when I found out that I was pregnant. I was a senior in high school. It was one of the most scariest times and most traumatizing times of my life. I found out I was pregnant. I just kind of knew, actually. Like, I knew I wasn't feeling well. I was like really tired all the time.
Did you have like morning sickness?
No, I didn't have morning sickness. And I was just like, I was sleeping a lot, and I was like, something is wrong. And so I ended up taking I actually took a couple of pregnancy tests, and they came out positive. And I was like, nope, this can't be true.
Did you really not believe them?
Yeah, I didn't believe them. Because I didn't want it to be true, and I was just like, I just need to go to a clinic. So I actually ended up going to a clinic, and you did a blood test there. And that's actually how I found out. But I was actually pregnant for 6 months before I told anyone in my family. Like, nobody knew.
Nobody.
I wasn't showing. I didn't have morning sickness, nothing. So it was like that for a long time. The only people that knew was my son's dad, obviously, and then his grandma, his mom knew. And I had no courage to tell my mom that I was going to be the first person in our family to give her first grandchild. That was just a lot of trauma. There's a lot of fear, I think, she instilled in us, because she'd always be like, you better not fucking get pregnant, hija de tu madre, más te vale que no te vas a embarazar.
True words.
So I'd be like, oh, I could never tell my mom. And not only that, like, I was getting ready to apply for college. I remember I was like, what am I going to do? I wanted to go off to UC San Diego. That was my dream school. And I just didn't have the courage to tell her. And I kept quiet for so long. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I had considered an abortion, but I didn't know for sure, like, what I was going to do. And I think the worst part is just, like, feeling very alone. And my son's grandma being like, if you don't have this kid, Dios te va maldecir y ya no te va a dar más hijos. And I'd be like, what?
So she kind of put fear in you?
Yeah, saying like God wasn't going to give me any more kids if I didn't have this kid.
Oh my God.
And I was just like, what do I do? Scary. God's going to punish me because I'm a bad person to have an abortion. And I just wasn't mature at all. So, yeah.
I was really active. I was already working. I was active. I was going to the gym. I was partying. I was doing everything a typical 19-year-old was doing. And these stomach pains I was getting were kind of abnormal to me because I've never really experienced anything like that. So I was like, hey, let me take a trip to the doctor. So I go to the doctor, and they're all like, hey, let's just do a pregnancy just in case. And I was like, I didn't think much of it. I was like, okay, I knew, or at least I thought I knew. I was like, for sure I'm not pregnant. Nurse comes back and she was like, hey, guess what? You're pregnant. And when she said those words to me, I was like, what? That was the last thing on my mind. I thought it was going to be like maybe an ulcer or, you know, something else. Everything else but pregnant. And I couldn't believe it. At that time, the boyfriend that I had at the time was somebody that I got with
Ex-husband.
Currently now ex-husband. We were together since we were 17. You know, then eventually we developed a relationship and got married. But at the moment when I found out I was pregnant, we were just together. We were just boyfriend and girlfriend. And it was a tough decision. It wasn't planned. It wasn't something that I was thinking about at the moment. I knew eventually it was going to happen, but just not at 19. It was very overwhelming. I didn't know what to do. And I remember I contemplated about it a lot. And I remember at one point I was like, I think I'm just going to get an abortion, you know, because it's not something I could handle. So I remember when I called, the guy that answered gave me a very, very descriptive image in my head about what they were going to do. And when he told me what they were going to do, I was like, I can't do this. I was like, I can't go through with this. And I remember even though I still made the appointment, I never went. I couldn't go through with it. I was like, I can't do that. It didn't seem right. So I was like, I'll just have to face the consequences and see how, you know, we take it from there. And we did. It wasn't easy, but we were able to do it.
So we moved in together shortly after we both had our kids. Jacob was 1 and Danica was just a few months. And our apartment where we lived with my mom at the time was complete chaos.
And crammed, very crammed.
There were so many people living there. There was like, it was a very small apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment for like 7, 8 people. And it just, we were constantly fighting. Most of us were adults at the time. And one day we just had a conversation. We were like, we just need to move out. And so that's what we did. We all had jobs, and that was just kind of like the beginning of us living together. And, you know, we would have never have thought how many loops and hurdles you have to go through just to rent an apartment and, you know, fill out applications and credit scores and
paying bills
every single month and furniture. And that was just like the beginning of adulthood, on top of having a kid, which is already hard in and of itself. And so I think being a young mom, I was just kind of like, whoa, what did I get myself into? I think at the beginning for me, there was a lot of like cloud 9 with having a baby. And I was just like, oh, this precious little child of mine that I get to take care of and dress and, you know, educate. But then it's like, after a while, it dawns on you that it's like, yeah, well, it's not pretty every day. And there was a lot of struggle because I was still so young, and I was like, what am I going to do with my life? What kind of career do I want? How am I going to support this child? And I think that throughout this whole journey, it's like you have to get it together, whether you like it or not.
real quick.
If you want to, you know, put in a lot of love and care and tenderness into raising a child.
Yeah, it wasn't easy. You know, we were able to move in. We were able to settle down, but then it came to the part of being like, okay, you need to hurry up and be an adult. You know, you have to keep your job. You have to put food on the table. You have to care for the child. And then, you know, getting into routine with them, like them crying and trying to figure out what's wrong with them. And I feel like that was the toughest for me, because it's just like, you know, I was like 19 and you're like, the baby's crying, and they're like, why? I'm like, I don't know, you know, and it wasn't easy. We didn't always, very little support from family. So a lot of it was like, we were on our own to figure it out. And that was tough. That was very emotional, especially for me. It was very emotional. There was times where I would remember I would break down. I would be home alone and I would break down because I didn't know what to do. I truly did not know what to do. And there was times where I'm like, well, you know, they were either at work, you know, my sister or my boyfriend at the time. And it was just kind of like, what do I do? So it took a lot of trial and error, figuring things out, what works for me, what didn't. And then as they got older, you know, the dynamics also changed as well. Okay, they came out of diapers. Now they're walking. And then, you know, eventually into school. And it was a learning process, but it wasn't an easy one. It was not an easy one.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, so when we moved in together, it was me, Michelle, our 2 kids, Jacob, Danica, and then her ex-husband, who was living with us at the time. And, you know, I think we were a really good support system amongst us, that we were able to, like, help each other out. My son's dad never lived with us, so I think my sister's ex-husband was really supportive in that he kind of took on that dad role for my son Jacob. And I think that was a really huge help because, you know, his dad has never really been in the picture. And I think we were able to really support each other when it came to being able to raise each other's kids and who's picking up who, and, you know, we have to go to school and daycare and all this stuff. And, you know, there's nothing that can prepare you for that at all, especially being as young as I was.
No book, no lesson, no nothing, none of it.
You know, but it's like I feel like if you want to raise a child that's, you know, happy and healthy and makes good decisions and is conscientious about, you know, their surroundings, it takes a lot of work.
A lot.
Especially a lot of emotional work that nobody can ever prepare you for. And unlike our childhood, like, we didn't have a lot of support from, you know, family, so to speak, and parents and stuff. I think that was the biggest thing for me, because it would have been nice to have, like, somebody telling me, whether it was like a parent or a mentor, like, hey, this is how you do this, or this is not how you do these things, or you're making some really bad decisions. And I didn't have that.
We didn't have that.
And I think those are things that we just need to figure out on our own, and figure out, like, well, what kind of parent do we want to be? What kind of mom do I want to be? What kind of example do I want to be for my son?
And it's funny that you say that, because I feel like once I had Danica, that is something that I thought about continuously. just because of the way we grew up. Our childhood was pretty traumatic. It wasn't a normal childhood. And it was a lot to think about. A lot of the things that we went through, that they put us through, I didn't want to repeat it. I wanted to do quite the opposite. So it was really hard to try to be like, well, where do I start? Or what do I do? And it seems easy to be like, to raise a child, to be like, just be there for them and love them. But if you were never taught that, where do you start?
I think some of the things that have helped me the most was going to college. School for me was super important, and it was really important for me to make sure that I finished college, even though I didn't go to my dream school. So I ended up going to Cal State LA, and it was very tricky, and I think it took me longer than I would have liked to finish. But I would say that throughout the time that I was there, I had some very super supportive professors that I cared about, that I still care about so much, and that were supportive through everything that I went through. And I think just overall for me, college taught me how to be a good parent. Everything that I was learning, I was just soaking it in like a child. And I was like, I wanted to be a psychology major, so I took all these psychology classes, and I took like child psychology, and I was like, emotions and kids, and what are some of the ways that kids respond well. And so I actually just took it all in, and I was like, okay, I'm going to apply these things in being a mother, because these are things that are affecting kids. And I would come home and I'd share it with Michelle, and I'd be like, hey, like maybe we can try this, maybe we can try that,
which really helped.
Yeah,
she would come home and give me really good tips, or it's just kind of seeing it like from a different perspective, and it changed a lot of dynamics, with the way we were raising the kids.
Yeah, like we went from being like yelling and screaming to being like, okay, no, that approach doesn't work. Or like changing from like instilling fear in the kids and being like, you can't do this, you can't do that, to being like, no, let's have a conversation. Or treating it with a different approach, like, why don't we show more love? And and I say all of this because that's not the way we were raised. And our parents are very traditional Mexican, and so there's a lot of abuse and violence involved, with belts and chanclas and all that stuff. And so it was very different for us to think about like, well, how do we want to raise our kids?
How do we want to discipline them?
And so I think that made a huge difference in the way that we began to raise our kids. But it did take a long time to make those changes.
A lot of trial and error.
A lot of trial and error to be like, okay, how are we going to do this differently from the way we did things, with the way that our parents did things. And shortly after that, I began to go to therapy. And so when my son was younger, I realized that I had a lot of baggage that I hadn't taken care of. And so it was affecting my relationship both with Jacob and with Michelle, because we lived together, and there was all these issues that were coming up, and there was fights, and there was yellings. And
but wait, what do you mean by baggage?
There was like a lot of like emotional and traumatic things that happened in my childhood that I knew that I'd never dealt with before. And when I started to go to therapy, I began to understand like, oh wow, these are all the things that happen. And I can talk about that in another video, but because it's a lot too. But so just dealing with all the emotional baggage, because I believe that it's hard to be a good parent if you haven't dealt with your own issues.
I think just with anything in general, like even
not
just children, but relationships. I feel like you carry that on, and it's not until you're able to work through it and really see it for what it is that you're able to actually move on. Because I feel like it puts you like in this position where you feel stuck.
Yeah, and it's just like you feel freer, you feel like in a different headspace, and all those things I began to notice like going through therapy. And I began to understand the trauma that I went through and why I went through it and how it affected me and my relationship with Jacob, and why, I wasn't seeing things the way that I wanted them to, and, through rose-colored lens. And, I think overall I was missing a lot of love that I didn't get, love that I didn't feel like I got from my parents. And that was really hard to take in. So I think therapy was also like the second biggest thing that actually made a difference in me being a mother. And I think the last thing that I would say has also been a big contributor was when we went to Peru. So we went to Peru, how long has it been now? 3 years? Yeah, I think about 3 years. We went to Peru 3 years ago, and we actually did ayahuasca. If you don't know about it, look it up on Google. But ayahuasca is a medicine that you can actually do in the jungle, and you actually go to this retreat and you take this really powerful medicine, and it actually helps you with like trauma and depression and all kinds of different things. And we
which
can
is
talk
another
about that.
video.
Which is another video.
We'll be talking about and our experiences with that.
Yeah, and so actually going to Peru not only is such a beautiful place to visit, but also there's a lot of retreat places that you can go and do ayahuasca as well. And so going to ayahuasca and just kind of having that whole experience was just life-changing as well.
Very life-changing. So I would say one of the things that helped me get through a lot of the emotions that I didn't know that where they were coming from, where the reason why I was getting upset so often, yelling, I felt like I had a lot of anger inside of me and I didn't understand where it was coming from. And I went to therapy shortly after she started. And then I had the aha moment where I was just like, I get it now. I also too had a lot of baggage, very different from hers. My trauma was a little bit different. And it really helped me get through all of that. My journey was very emotional and very difficult. There was days where it was really hard. And there was days that I felt very light and free of just getting certain things off my chest. It wasn't easy. There was a period also of time where I was also on medication because I needed that to help me get through the depression. I also went into a deep depression as well. And just getting through that was an emotional roller coaster. And I would think about it daily. And I think the thing that really helped me through it was being like, I need to get better for my daughter. I need to be emotionally healthy for my daughter and for myself. I was like, the only way I'm going to be able to function is if I start to work through this and get better. And it also helps, it also helped with the relationships. Our relationship also got better. We were able to connect on so many levels, get a lot of things off our chest because our relationship started off rocky when we first moved in together. There was some resentment there. There was some things there that were not talked about. But because of therapy, we were able to clear a lot of those things. And like she said, ayahuasca, life-changing. I would say life-changing. I would say after I did ayahuasca, I wasn't on medication anymore. At all.
Medication for what?
I was on medication for depression and anxiety. And I was really headstrong to be like, I need to get through this. I need to get to a point where I'm not on medication and I'm able to handle my emotions better. And that was my goal. It took a while. It took I would say I was doing therapy and medication for more or less 3 years. It wasn't easy because there was days where I felt like this is never going to end. These feelings are never going to go away. And I would tell her, I remember telling her is this sad feeling never going to go away? And it's tough because it's like you have children and you want to be happy and you want to engage, but you can't really help the way you feel. It's just like, I can't shake this off. It's not something where you're like, maybe if I sleep it off or I do something to distract me. No, it was hard. And I feel like that's not something that's really talked about, within mothers, that you're not feeling okay. You're not doing okay. And you have all these things that you need to take care of, all these responsibilities, feeding the kids, washing, cleaning, working, and then you have this on top of it, which made it extra hard. So it was a challenge, but we were able to do it. And I'm really happy that it was something that we were both able to experience together. Not only did it bring us together, but just to be able to share experiences with her. I think if maybe she wasn't around, I probably would have not approached it as fast or done it as fast as the way I did it. I probably would have maybe not really gone through with it and probably put it on the back burner, but I'm really glad we were able to share this experience with her.
That's awesome. I just think, I think one of the most important things is having a support system. That's really important. And whether it's like a friend or a family member or a cousin or, coworker or something that you can actually, because it's hard. It is really hard. And it's taken so many years to get to where we're at today.
I think even just talking about it, saying, she's my sister, I think just talking to her about the things that I was going through wasn't easy. So, being able to be comfortable and being able to find somebody you trust would be great. Would be really great because it really does help. It really did help. And then shortly after, also what helped me too was journaling. When he would tell me, I would be like, writing. I would be like, why? But then I realized writing my emotions daily really helped.
Who told you to write your emotions?
My therapist had told me to write about my emotions. And I still do it to this day. There's times where I feel a little overwhelmed maybe at work or with school or maybe sometimes at home, I'm able to write about it, and I really feel better after. And I carry a little book with me, and I've had it, I would say, already going on for 3 years. It looks raggedy, but I have all the emotions in there. Sometimes daily, just whenever they come, it really has helped.
So thank you so much for listening to our stories. If there's anything that moved you from this or anything else you'd like us to go into detail about, we can make another video in very specific things.
Let us know in our comments.
Whether it's like, raising a child or, anything at all, we would love to hear from you. Please DM us with your stories, whether it's on Instagram or in the comments below or through email. We'd love to hear from you. Just know that you're not alone. We've been through a lot of this stuff. Our kids are a little bit older now, so we've had a lot of practice. And yeah,
we're here to listen. If you just need somebody to vent to or talk to, we're here. Look for us on our Instagram. Here, email us anything that you feel comfortable with. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Bye.